Hey everybody, it's Kevin McCarthy here, and I'm so excited to finally be able to present this conversation to you today on the podcast. This is a conversation that I've been waiting to share since October of last year, 2025, and this is all surrounding Paul Thomas Anderson's brilliant film, One Battle After Another, which has now been nominated for 13 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Cinematography, and so many more. This is amazing to see, and this is a film that really was critically received well. It did incredible at the box office, and now I really want to take people behind the scenes to the craft of how this movie was made. And I'm so lucky to have been asked to moderate this conversation at the Kodak House, and this is a conversation that takes you behind the scenes and really kind of gives you an understanding of the amazing people who work in the camera department, the editing department, to bring really this collaborative process to the big screen. And let me introduce who we have in this conversation, and obviously you're going to hear the conversation shortly after this introduction, but Michael Bauman, who's the amazing cinematographer for the film, Serge Nafa, who is the first AC, assistant camera, Tana Dubbe, who is the key grip. You also have the amazing Andy Jurgensen, who's the editor, and then his associate editor, Jay Trautman, talking all about the process of making this movie and how it was edited, how it was shot. And there's some really, really cool and interesting information about how the camera setups worked and how sequences were filmed. And obviously the River of Hills scene is a scene that everyone's talking about. And we dive into how that scene was shot, how the focus pulling was done. It's really interesting. And I will say, for people listening to this, we did have clips from the film that day when we recorded this conversation. We recorded it in front of an audience at the Kodak House. And so those clips have been removed from this version of the episode, but you will hear us setting up the clips and you will hear us discussing the clips. And the idea now being that we would assume that most people have probably seen the film at this point. If you're listening to this podcast episode, you've probably seen the film multiple times. And so I hope you really enjoy the breakdown of how some of these sequences were put together. And you're going to see some really cool, never before seen photos of the behind the scenes production of One Battle After Another. There's some really great pictures in here that I think people are going to be really excited to see. Definitely watch the video portion of this episode if you can. The general conversation is in the audio format, but because we have these really cool pictures interspersed throughout the episode, I highly recommend doing that so you can actually see the camera rigs and the setups that the guests are talking about. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you to Vanessa Bendetti at Kodak for allowing me to moderate this conversation, and also thank you to Erica Frauman, who is the amazing post-production supervisor for Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another and so many other amazing films as well. And so thank you to both Erica and Vanessa for helping put this together, and I'm honored to share this conversation. I hope you enjoy it, and definitely let us know in the comments below if you want to hear more conversations like this in the future. Take a look.
So without further ado, Kevin McCarthy, please come on down.
Hi, everybody. This is an honor to be here, and I'm going to bring out Vanessa Bendetti as well, who's the head of motion picture and vice president of Kodak. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Kevin.
So as we mentioned, this is going to be recorded for my film podcast, On Film. So we're going to try and kind of walk through and highlight the craft of all the incredible people who are behind this film and kind of made the film that you see and brought Paul's vision to life. I'm just going to get our guests out here now because we have so many incredible, talented artists here today. Starting out with Mike Bauman, who is the cinematographer for the film. Come on, Mike. We also have Serge Nafa. Sit wherever you want. Come on over here. Yeah. We have Serge.
Hello.
Serge Nafa, who is the first AC.
Give it up, Serge.
We also have Tana Dubbe, who is the key grip on the film.
Woo! She killed it. She killed it.
I also got to bring out Andy Jurgensen, who edited this incredible film. And last but not least, Jay Trautman, who's the associate editor on this film.
Woo!
Are we missing a seat? Oh, there we go. All right, what an honor this is to have everybody here. We were just talking backstage about the process of making this film. I have a lot of notes here. Mike, it's a pleasure to talk to everybody, but I'm going to start off with Vanessa first because this is for a podcast as well. I want to set the scene about where we are for this conversation, but also Kodak and the incredible work that Kodak does with great filmmakers. Obviously, we saw that phenomenal video you put out earlier this year with Ryan Coogler for Sinners, explaining formats. But Vanessa, to speak a little bit about Kodak House and kind of the importance of being here today.
Yes, thanks for being here with us today, Kevin. I'm super excited about this conversation specifically. Kevin is such an enthusiastic, genuine, and technical journalist, and he really takes the time to understand the craft behind what we get to see on screen. And he and I actually met through DMs on Instagram when he was trying to make sure he was speaking about film formats accurately. So I really appreciate that about you, and we're excited to have you here today. The Kodak House is located in Hollywood. You all know that because you're here, but for the audio audience. And we sell film here. We have will call services from 10 to 4, Monday through Friday. And then we also do educational and community programming. And really our vision for this space was to be able to bring filmmakers together, to be able to talk about their craft, to meet, especially during this time in the industry when it's tough here in LA. There's a lot less production. So this is a space where people can get to know one another and advance their careers by learning and making connections. And so that's really the meaning of this space. And this movie kind of speaks to all of that. I'm a little nostalgic about this panel specifically. Serge and I met in the early 90s working for Tony Scott. So the first movie we worked together on was The Fan. And then we worked on Enemy of the State together as well. So I've known Serge for a long time and haven't seen him for a while. And this movie and directors like Paul Thomas Anderson are also so key to our medium because they challenge Kodak. They challenge every part of the ecosystem for film with, resurrecting camera systems with VistaVision, with exhibiting in VistaVision and resurrecting projection and equipment to be able to do that. They utilize our entire film portfolio because they're photochemically finishing, which a lot of directors don't do today. And so I'm just really excited to have the craftspeople behind this title here to talk about the movie and to talk about the components to the film workflow that are kind of the backbone of it. So I just really appreciate everybody being here today, and thank you, Kevin, for leading us through it.
No, it's an honor, and I mentioned this to Vanessa earlier. I didn't go to film school. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just a film journalist, but I learned about filmmaking through DVD features. I used to watch a lot of Peter Jackson and Robert Rodriguez DVD features to learn about filmmaking, and artists like yourselves I would see interviewed in these features about the process of making films, and I found that interesting. So please, if I say anything that's incorrect, please correct me. I want to make sure we highlight the amazing work that you all do. So I'm going to start off by asking you to introduce yourselves to the audience and also your role in the film and kind of like the idea of your job. I'll start with Mike Bauman first, the cinematographer for One Battle After Another. And we have so much to talk to. We are going to get to the River of Hills scene, I promise you, which is remarkable. But Mike, speak about your role and kind of your history with Paul.
Well, first of all, thanks for the invite, and it's great to see everybody here. We haven't been together since probably the last screening of Dailies, I've been working with Paul since 2010 when we started on The Master together, and I was gaffing. My career is mostly as a gaffer, and I was working with him on The Master, Inherent Vice, and this is the 5th project I've done with him. So. Paul is somebody who's just, his knowledge of all of it is all the technical aspects and everything is very strong. So as a cinematographer, you're just working with him as, kind of in collaboration with so many people who bring so much to the table, especially this particular production, because this was very different from some of the other things that we've done in the past. And so, yeah.
And Mike, a lot of cinematographers, they'll either enter to cinematography through either lighting or the camera department in a way. And lighting was obviously something that's your specialty in that sense. And talk about that, why being a gaffer kind of like, and then essentially you became the DP on Licorice Pizza and now One Battle After Another. Talk about being a gaffer and kind of how that, made you the cinematographer you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been really lucky to have worked with a bunch of amazing cinematographers over my career as a gaffer, and just to see everyone's processes, which I think has really been super informative. Tana and I I've done, and I've worked with a lot of folks here, but I mean, Tana and I have been working together since 2000, and I think that was when we did Phone Booth, and yeah, and so. But I think the thing is like, I remember we were doing a movie, it was Harris Savitas' last movie, it was called The Bling Ring. And Harris was someone, he was dealing with a lot of sickness then, but it was kind of his last film. But what he was just like, he just said, hey, look, we're here to just do, he wanted to always do something interesting. So he's like, keep it simple and don't be afraid to screw up. And I was just thinking of that throughout this whole process of making this movie, because it's just, you have to lean into the uncomfortable in this film for all of us, I think, because all of us were really pushed into spaces that to kind of get our heads wrapped around what Paul's vision was for the film, and it wasn't necessarily always a comfortable experience, not creatively, but just like internally, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
We're going to break that down in the conversation. Serge, you are one of my favorite artists in the industry. You're remarkable, and the filmography that you've worked on is incredible. As the first AC, explain to the audience kind of what that role is. Obviously, focus pulling is a huge part of that as well, but managing the department, the camera departments, talk about that as well.
Yeah, I pull focus, and then I thread the camera, and I make sure that it doesn't jam. Ever.
Do you remember like the first shot? Do you remember the?
He
first,
killed it, people. He killed it.
No.
Do you remember the first shot you pulled focus on that you were just genuinely proud of on a film?
Wow. Well, this one had, the one of Willa coming in on the 3-to-1 with the doubler was kind of sexy. Yeah.
It's an awesome.
I'll say that, yeah. Also, I'm in charge of about 5 sexy motherfuckers. And it's my job to make sure they all work like a pit crew. So that's it. I'll hand it off to my right-hand lady.
Let's go to Tana, Dubbe, the key grip. I mean, I was looking at some incredible behind-the-scenes photos recently of the camera rigs, especially on the cars. Your role as key grip is obviously very key, no pun intended, to the production, but speak about the idea of what a key grip is and kind of also your role in this collaboration.
Let's see. I think the key grip is sort of like the uncle that you bring your busted bike to. And we interface with every single department. And, our main job is don't let anybody get hurt, and if it involves gravity, then it's in our wheelhouse.
Every day I was like, Tana, what the hell are we doing now?
A lot of that.
I got you. Here we.
And it's crazy because you have the VistaVision cameras and the balancing of them with it's remarkable. We'll dive all into that. Andy Jurgensen, an amazing editor. Your history with Paul, and you had the associate editor title for a while that Jay has now. Talk about your work with Paul over the years and just where you are now as an editor.
Yeah, I started working with him on Inherent Vice as an assistant editor, and have basically worked on all of the movies since. And I also started cutting a bunch of the music videos for Haim and Radiohead. So that's kind of how my relationship, got stronger with Paul as an editor. But yeah, for Licorice Pizza, I got bumped up to editor, and that was my first movie, like feature. And I think everyone can attest, like, Paul's circle and his sense of family is like so strong, So it's just been amazing being able to just kind of figure out what his sensibility is over all these years, and I think now we have a pretty good working relationship. Like,
I like the pit crew analogy. It feels like that. And Jay Trautman, associate editor here, your work, and obviously you and I were nerding out about aspect ratios and everything, but your role is incredibly key to the filmmaking process. Talk about that role as an associate editor.
Yeah, I came on to start working with this group when Andy got bumped up. He needed an assistant for Licorice Pizza, so I was lucky enough to be that guy. And then on this one, got me the credit of associate editor. But basically, I'm doing the technical part of the editorial. I'm making sure all the film that's shot ends up in editorial, that we don't not have anything that they're expecting to have later on. We're checking to make sure that all the film was processed in a way where it looks the way it's supposed to look. We didn't have any problems. If we see scratches or any kind of issues with the film, we have to let them know right away so that if they need to go back and reshoot something, they can do that. And then we'll talk about dailies, but this film's a little bit different in that they screen print dailies every day. So a lot of what I'm doing during production is making sure that Andy has what he needs to kind of run the daily screening that night while organizing the footage for him to edit later on.
Wow. Well, let's dive into the VistaVision aspect of the filmmaking, because these cameras, and we have, it's rare to see cameras like that being used in modern day filmmaking. And people who, for people who don't know, with VistaVision cameras, the film stock is running through the camera horizontally, exposing 8 perforations of film real estate essentially per frame, which is remarkable because normally within a 35 millimeter camera you have the vertical run through with the 4 perforations. And so, Mike, I'll start out with you first and kind of the challenges of the VistaVision cameras. Obviously, Serge and Tana, please chime in as well. But the VistaVision process and the challenges that brought to you as a cinematographer and that journey for you.
I mean, I think the biggest, well, there's several things, because it kind of reminded me back when we were doing the test for the master, because on that film, Paul wanted to just shoot sections of it in 65 and most of it in 35. And as we started doing testing, he was like, I want to shoot this whole thing in 65. At that time, 65 as a format had just kind of gone to the wayside a bit, and so the cameras we had were not very reliable. And that journey was very similar to what we had on this, whereas like when we started talking about VistaVision, and the other thing is like, the sheer volume of film that you shoot with him, like we did close to 1.5 million on this. And so when you're trying to run that much through cameras, it's, you're stress testing every aspect of it. And so the other thing is that the camera was very rarely just going to be sitting on sticks. It was going to be strapped to cars. It was going to be on a Steadicam, on sleds. It's going to be constant movement. I mean, our frame of reference, as far as visually, was The French Connection, and amazing film that Owen Roizman photographed. It was just all about having that energy. And I think we carried a print of that or something with us, because we'd periodically review it when he thought we were getting too off course. There's at least one screening.
we definitely screened it once, yeah.
Yeah. And so, so that was, when he was talking about shooting in Vista, and it was just like, okay, what is this actually going to take? And we do a lot of testing with him. We did, I think, 15 tests over the course of the entire film. But most of the chaos ended up in my friends to the right here, who had to deal with, like, how do you get this thing that it can actually work in all these different environments? I mean, because, we ended up going with Bocam because we had tested one other system, and that has its own characteristics. The viewing system and all that is, is at an odd angle, and so there was just a lot of technical hurdles to overcome, and I remember quite a bit of stress times over at old Panavision. Yeah.
What are you talking about, bro?
Mike, what about the different film stocks? How did you and Paul discuss the different stocks you would use for certain elements?
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
This is how this is going to go, guys. I mean, I got to be honest. You're going to be disappointed if you want some technical shit right now, man. I swear to God. This is a fucking jam session to the max.
I think making this film was about, if I was going to say it's just like free jazz. We always have, because it was just like, And there's nothing wrong with that. That was the creative process that it was. And I think it was about, like, as soon as we got into, like, okay, we're going to do this shot here and all this kind of business, that just wasn't in the jam session, you know? And it was mainly because, again, you go back to French Connection. You talk about that famous scene where Gene Hackman's driving the car underneath the subway, and just the energy of that. And that was something that he was like, the looseness of it and just the rawness. And he really wanted to take this, I don't know, this incredible script that he had written and operate it like it's an independent, low-budget movie. And so it was like everywhere from the lighting to the only thing that he was damn sure we had a ton of was film stock and lenses. Because we went out, I mean, I think I had heard that on, and maybe somebody knows this, but on French Connection they had 3 lenses, and we went out the door with like 43, you know? And so, and it's all custom stuff, not custom, but the Dan Sasaki magic, and, you know, I mean, just, yeah, so.
I'm not at liberty to discuss that part of it,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, Serge,
You can slide in my DMs. I'm a cheap date.
Serge, the challenges though of how the VistaVision presented challenges for your job. I mean, obviously you've been doing this for a long time, but how did the VistaVision play into challenging the way you work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a film junkie, man. So, I mean, obviously PTA is a draw, but the prospect of getting this format back in the game was very appealing. I said, you know, that's what I thought when I took the job in November, and we were still prepping these cameras to the bitter end at midnight, sometime in January. Rio Zumwalt, where are you? Verify. And I was like, this ain't gonna work. Thankfully, Giovanni Ribisi, I'll just shout him out. He had a Bocam that was pretty sweet. And all these cameras, like, it's just a bunch of guys in their garage just putting a bunch of shit together and, like, making it work. So it's not like you have this industrial backing to, like, really fine-tune it, get things up to spec to the way that we're accustomed to on big movies. So, but, you know, we came out of the prep, and, like, we still didn't know what aspect ratio we were going to be shooting. And I couldn't get cameras to stay sync crystal 24. And I was like, I'm not going to last 2 hours on this movie.
And you had the ground glass. The ground glass had lines on it, so you could indicate where you were in your aspect ratios. Can you speak? Because Colin Anderson, can you speak to that?
Oh my God.
That was a mess. I mean, it was just tough.
We didn't know, through some of the tests, we were maybe going to do 235. And then as we were screening, we should talk about the dailies process, because I think that's a big part of how things evolve as we're shooting. So we traveled with a VistaVision projector, and we would set up a screening room at all of our locations. So we would send negative down to Photochem, and then they would send prints back to us. So at the end of each shoot day, we could watch dailies. We could watch stuff on a big screen being projected. So it helped because we could see sort of technical issues with the VistaVision cameras, and also to look at the stock and to decide, okay, maybe we need to reshoot this, or it's working, or whatever. So in that process, it kind of evolved to us deciding that we were going to shoot the master aspect ratio would be 185, and then because of the 150 size of the VistaVision negative, that we could go all the way up to 143 for our full IMAX presentations. So when we were watching dailies on location, we were actually watching it full frame. And so kind of that was giving us the experience of what it was going to look like in like a big sort of square size.
These dailies were like communal presentations. Like I felt like you were getting your own showtime of the movie in a way.
Yeah.
It was a party.
It was a little bit of a party. It was just
What made it all worth it.
Yeah, it was a good way for the crew to kind of, just review the work, but just have like a good kind of a bonding.
It was essential.
Yeah.
Because it literally, you saw the work you were doing and you corrected yourself.
Here's a great tip for your dailies. Pump in some music. I mean, PTA would pump in music, and usually you're watching dailies and it's just silent. So you're sitting there like, I don't know. This is gonna be a good movie. Fuck. But with the music, I'm like, holy shit, he's scoring. He has it pumped in. It's legit. I've never seen that done before, and it really helps kind of inform the themes.
Yeah,
It's
what we
cool.
do is we have like a little mixing board. So we have we're still playing the production audio, so it's synced up to the picture, but we are then Paul can like plug his phone in so that he can play stuff that Johnny's sending stuff. The composer Johnny Greenwood is sending, you know, ideas for songs or score, so we can play that just underneath the scenes, or needle drops or anything like that. So it's I don't know, it's very helpful, and I'm there. I traveled with the production the whole time, and then I could.
Rare to have the editor travel with the production?
No, they'll sometimes go, but they'll just work in their own office. You know, sometimes just cutting together scenes, and the editor or the director will come to, you know, watch stuff. But I was mostly there to, you know, of course, review footage that was coming in, but to be there for the daily screenings, because then I could be there with Paul, sitting next to him, taking notes about the good takes and just discussing what we were going to reshoot or how things were supposed to look. So, you know, we've made a lot of decisions in the dailies process of like, okay, it's take 10 for this shot, you know, and then I can start kind of assembling while they're shooting during the day. I can be working on my computer and starting to assemble stuff. So that's kind of the process during production.
I was just going to say, I think the thing that was really critical, and it's a kind of a thing that's lost now in how dailies are handled, because now, you know, even if you're shooting on film, most of the workflow is digital, so everybody's just getting a link to a Pix or something of that nature. And what was great about this is that we're all on location, but we just would all be able to sit together and review footage. And yes, everyone's tired and all that, but you're able to actually see the work every day, and just as a team, it just kind of pulls people together in an
And see it
interesting way.
big, too.
And see it big. And
I mean, the
tunes
things
crank,
you miss when you're
yeah.
watching it on a phone or an iPad,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
seeing
just
it huge.
a lot of stuff. So that was really great.
I mean, the fact that you were hauling around a VistaVision projector is incredible to me. Tana, just kind of back to an extension of what Mike was talking about the challenges of VistaVision. These cameras are obviously very different in terms of the way they, you know, it's the horizontal aspect, but the balance is different as well. Can you speak about the challenges of the VistaVision cameras and setting up these rigs, like for cars and sequences, and kind of how that changed from what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it was like any other sewing machine, really. Yeah. I mean, you just got a, 5-pound flounder in a 4-pound sack is always the way it is. And,
I
it's
miss
like
those.
how
The
to get it
expressions.
low enough. It was always ripping off the hoods. You want to really get your root ball down super low so you're not showing your hand and digging into windscreens and side windows and whatnot. But so the one advantage of the VistaVision and the sideways mag is that you can get the camera higher. Because normally the mag, the old rooster, sticks up and runs into the roof. This way you could really cram it up in there. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, and they were very solid state. I mean, he took care of the,
It's a great threading experience too when it's
Yeah.
way up there and you got to open it. It's threading from the top.
Well, yeah. Then there was that too. Yeah, you gotta leave a bit of airspace for to open up the hatch and get into the meat. Which was always sort of an issue. We had to think about ways that we could pull it out, let him have access, operate, and then go back.
It's remarkable. I want to show a clip. So we're going to show the beginning of the film. And the reason I want to show this clip, obviously, is to just kind of set the scene of how incredible this film is. And this is going to be a clip that starts at the beginning of the film. Andy, do you mind just setting this up for the audience? And because I do want to talk to Mike about Tiana's running sequences. So this is obviously something we could talk about from this clip as well. So Andy, do you mind setting this up for the audience?
Sure. This is the beginning of the movie when the French 75 is raiding the immigration camp.
The one thing that really struck me about watching that again, but I've seen it 3 times, once in VistaVision and twice in IMAX 70mm, is it's an intimate yet epic experience at the same time. Like a face just tells so much of a story, even without dialogue and in certain aspects. Mike, can you speak about the choice of shooting spherical versus anamorphic and that decision, and kind of, as we just watched that scene, why the spherical lens choice is, something that you preferred over the anamorphic?
I think, Paul has definitely had his reasons for wanting to shoot spherical, but I think his lens selection was probably our biggest choice for that, as far as just everything we wanted to do. And we did shoot some Super 35 in this film too, so we had lenses that could cross over between both of those. That scene was really just flashing back to some tough memories on that day.
If you want to protect it for a 1.5, there's no real good anamorphic lenses that are going to do that, but he just didn't want that look anyway. And the spherical lenses are more manageable, they're smaller, and they're far more available. Yeah. So.
And can you speak a little bit to the idea of that intimate epic aspect of the filmmaking, and there's a scene obviously later on in the film with Regina Hall where we're just on her face as she's crying, and you learn so much about her arc and her emotional just by a close-up on her face. Same with Sean Penn in the film as well. A face tells a whole story. As a cinematographer, can you speak about a face in that way?
Well, I think, I mean, one of the things is that, Paul, you're always shooting practical locations. Like, we did very, very, very little stage on this job. And so it's about getting we were going to be right in there with them. There's no doubt. And so many of the cast have just so many interesting looks and so many, just unique characteristics to their own faces, like Tana's, the structure of her face and how that's just very interesting, how it catches light and all that. But I was going to say is the fact that getting the camera into these spaces. It was all about, I mean, in the car, like that scene where they're yelling at each other, or after they had jumped in the car and they're driving off. I mean, camera was jammed in the front seat, just rolling down the road.
Yeah, no, Colin was a contortionist.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any oh, we've got a buck and we've cut off half the car and there's all this stuff. It wasn't that. It was as practical as possible.
And that station wagon in particular was a pain in the arse because it was kind of dragon tail anyway, and then we overloaded it with all the people and the camera and everything else. And then the rig wasn't something that we had anything specially built for, so we had to come off the pinch welds on the bottom of the car, and then the camera, as you saw when Jungle Pussy shoots, is out quite a ways. So it was a spring kind of crazy rig.
I was wondering, Andy, if you could set this clip up, because I want to use this scene as a really kind of looking at the editing of this sequence, especially how we're cutting back and forth between the two vehicles. But yeah, can you set up what's happening in this scene?
Okay, well, there's just been a bank robbery, and Tiana's character has just shot a cop, and so they are running out and escaping the scene, and they jump into two cars to escape.
Right. And the editing back and forth between the two cars is what I kind of want to highlight here, because this is incredible. Take a look. Andy and Jay, I want to focus with you a bit on this, because what I found striking about that scene, just watching it just now, is the sound design, because when we enter the helicopter shot, we get the sound of the helicopter POV, which I think is fascinating, because as we were talking about it earlier, like we're backstage about the ding, ding, ding of the car alarm as she's putting the seatbelt on. Some sound effects enter the world as we're with the sound effects. So I was wondering if you could speak to the idea of the editing choices of that sequence. Because one thing I want to really highlight here is every technical decision that is made is servicing the narrative. Every single thing we watch, we're following certain characters because we care about their arcs and their journeys. So editing back and forth between certain cars and certain characters in their cars and the reactions is all servicing the arc of every character in the story. Regina, I really look at her face a lot in that sequence as well, because she's obviously terrified in that way. But can you speak about your editing choices in that sequence, you and Jay?
Well, I'd say this sequence is as much about the sound as it is about the picture, because kind of going back to French Connection, that's what's so good about some of those sequences in that movie are just the crunching of the metal and the scrapes that you hear and revs and so like that was we put so much work into that element of it. Obviously, you know, the action was great and the way that you guys were able to shoot the car and swing around and you know, this is all like, you know, we didn't use any green screen or anything for this or for the end. This is all, they're in the cars and they're really feeling this, you know, the actors were terrified, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, it's just, it's a, you know, it's a process. You're you know, I'm slowly assembling it, and then you're trying to figure out, well, how can we just, what else can we cross-cut to just make it all seem like it's all happening at the same time? And then with the sounds, I mean, finding the little whimpers or the screams, you know, even in the sound mix, we were like pumping up Deandra's, you know, yelp when they have the crash, and just anything to just get any more emotion out from the actors, just so that you really feel like you're right there, you know, following the cars or inside the cars. So, and you know, we also did not do any music during this, which is, you know, some other movie might do music here, and we decided to play it fully dry and just do sound effects to make it feel real.
How does that come about? Because I think score obviously it's a leading character in the film. Johnny's score it's a part of the atmosphere. It feels like it's a living, breathing character. But then you think, I always think about like No Country for Old Men, for example, where there's hardly any score in that film. And when you have minimal score, it's as effective as using score in certain ways. Do you and Paul and Jay, I'd love to chime in on this as well. How does that conversation come about where you go, okay, we're not going to use Johnny's music here. This is more about sound effects and sound design. When does that come about in the editing process, or is that known in the actual filming of the movie?
I mean, things change as the movie's getting cut, but the idea for this was always for it to be without music. Okay. But you know, sometimes that changes. In fact, the DNA test sequence that for a while was played dry as well. And then as that scene evolved and we ended up, you know, cross-cutting between that and the Deandra scene, we ended up talking to Johnny and doing something there to kind of, it's like a ticking clock kind of a score a little bit with like the wood blocks and sort of accenting these moments. So it just, you know, evolves. And you know, Paul is sending, or Johnny is sending score to Paul, like through, at all times, honestly. You know, not necessarily to picture. Sometimes he's getting dailies that we send him digitally just so we can kind of get a sense. But he's sending stuff to Paul that he'll play during dailies, and then Paul's sending stuff to Jay that we then just start compiling in a big bin of just all sorts of versions of various things that we could just start pulling from as we're building the scene.
And Jay, can you talk about your process in that sequence we just watched?
Yeah, on the sound side of it, what I and the rest of my crew, Colleen Murphy was our second assistant. She did a lot of sound work. We would go through like all the takes of all the cars and like, you know, the van. We would look at all the van, go through where we found good sounds, and we'd pull those aside into a bin, and we'd look for all like the engine revs and put those together, and all the brakes, and like basically try to build a palette of like all the sounds that we could use that were really recorded on the day in those locations. Because if Paul ever got a whiff of a canned sound effect from somewhere, that was like, no, that's gone, you know.
Yeah, he really likes to use real sound. So the sound department on set will record all sorts of stuff.
Yes.
We don't even like to do ADR. There is, in all of his movies, there's barely ADR. We just will try to find it or make it work through finding alt takes or whatever, just because it just never sounds the same.
Yeah, so I think we also, like you were talking about the sounds of the actors in the car, I think we were trying to find any place you could actually hear them over the the noise of the cars and of the camera, which the VistaVision camera was noisy.
You had a blimp of some sort to help with that in certain ways.
Sometimes.
Of some sort, I think
And
is the key part.
Jay had a filter that he could
We
at
could
least
do
like a
some-
filtering of initial filter.
Some initial noise reduction, but then that also gets into our post-sound crew, Chris Garbozio and the crew at Skywalker Sound. They weren't working on the movie every day, but they were always available to us to either clean up some dialogue, or for a scene like this, we could send them an early pass and just be like, hey guys, we need help with like, what is this helicopter going to sound like? Because there's no microphone in the helicopter, so that one we had to cheat. But you know, they would do passes for us. We would do, or they would just send us some stuff to work with that they had been compiling, and we would do a first pass on it. But then obviously, the curse of the picture editorial is that all the sound work we do for all the screenings, it's going to get replaced in the end by the pros. So we're just building like a blueprint for them.
But we did, because we were sending them stuff and they were building these multi-layered soundscapes. That a lot of the stuff was in the screenings and was in our Avid, and then it ended up kind of transitioning to the mix.
It evolves as we
everything
go,
evolves.
going back and forth, and then sometimes by the time we get to the mix, it's like, oh, this new thing that you guys spent all this time on, I like what I've been listening to for months and months and months, so let's use that instead.
Tana, if I could just bring you back into the fold here, the rigs in that particular sequence just now that we just watched. Obviously, you have cars crashing, and we're in the middle of a very high octane action sequence in that way. Do you have any particular memories of the rigs you created for that particular sequence, and kind of a story you might want to tell about how that was set up?
That whole get down was a head on a swivel situation, because there were so many. We were constantly in a bologna slicer situation where the cars were running one way, we were countering it with a souped up Subaru driven by Alan Padelford, which was awesome, and added a lot of it was exciting. It was exciting even beyond what it was happening there. I think it was the first time we used the crash cam. Was that our first?
For that sequence, with
Yeah,
crash
we-
cams.
where we-
Explain that?
cameras going.
A crash cam is like a steel box that you jam the camera in, and it's got a little hole in there where the lens can see out, and there's a little bit of protection sometimes. And then we rig it in a car so that it can withstand an impact without. A little bit of motion is exciting, but you don't want to project the camera, so it's a stiff rig.
Can you speak to that as well, the crash cam, and kind of how that, what your perspective on that is, and kind of setting that up and the risk of it essentially in that way?
Yeah, it's fun. Hopefully it doesn't work. I don't know. That's some career highlights when you can ruin a camera. Yeah, it's a big steel box. It's a pain in the ass to rig inside of a car. She throws on car mounts off and on like nobody's business. Like all day, we're just moving them around. They just off. New one's built, camera goes. I mean, the whole time it's like being a part of a bank heist gone wrong working with PTA. Like, all the improv and intensity. But when you got her, my guy, we make it happen.
In the 3 times I've watched the film, I don't know why this shot has stuck with me. And Mike, I want to talk to you about this shot. I want to show a quick scene of Sean Penn's character leaving the first meeting he has with the Christmas Adventurers Club. But there is something, the editing in that scene is incredible, because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's all score. I don't think we have any actual sound effects of him walking. I think it's just the score, and you have that pounding piece of music that hits 3 or 4 times in the film. And then there's a shot in that scene, which you're about to see, that, Mike, I want to speak to you about when Sean's walking down the stairs. It looks like you're going up very slowly, in a way, with him. And I wanted to speak about that as well, but also just the way you shot that sequence. Let's take a look at this. So I show that scene because there's that motion as we're going almost up the stairs with him as he's walking down. There's obviously has to be a narrative reasoning for that. I almost felt like I was leaning into the frame as an audience member and the immersion of that. But I was wondering if you could speak to that shot and the choice of pushing up, I mean, and how that shot was actually even done and your conversations with Paul on that.
I'm trying to remember, because I know we did it a couple different ways, and we were kind of experimenting with different things. There was some stuff, there was some Steadicam there, and then there was like,
Boom up, zoom in.
yeah, boom up,
it's
zoom
just
in.
a really slow zoom in.
Yeah, I think it's what it was.
We were incrementally doing
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we were leading him Steadicam to begin. Super tight, like 75 maybe.
Yeah.
200. T4, no, T2.
Yeah, it was
no,
pretty.
honestly, about a 75, 48 frames. I mean, they say that camera goes 48, but then you talk to the guys that make it, oh, maybe it can do 60. So Paul's like, can we do 60? And I'm like, I mean, we can try. I can put the number in.
There's
There
enough
we go.
if there's enough voltage behind it, maybe.
Yeah, it's dude.
Yeah,
That's
so
how
that's VistaVision going through 60 frames a second, so it's going really fast.
Yeah, it's like 120 frames on a regular 4-perf. Yeah.
I don't know why that shot stuck with me, but I just think it's brilliant to watch, especially when you see it in 1:4:3 on an IMAX 70 millimeter. Mike, for you, I find this interesting because at the end of the day, we're sitting here watching these images that you all brought to the screen, and we're hearing it with Johnny Greenwood's music. What is your relationship emotionally to seeing the images that you've created set to score? What is your emotional reaction to that? I know you see in the dailies you have the music playing as well with Paul, but I mean I'm just curious as a cinematographer what that feels like to see it set to music that way.
I mean, I think it only makes the images better. Like just to what you spoke of. Like if you turn the sound down, I'm sorry, and just watch the visual. Yeah, it's cool, but especially if you're watching in the theater with appropriate sound, and that score hits like it hits, it's amazing. But that's back to Phantom Thread, because when we were shooting that, and there were shots that we're doing, this is a great shot, and then he'd bring in Johnny's score into the mix, and it just like it elevates it all. It goes even back to like I remember seeing some documentary about Bernard Herrmann, who was Hitchcock's composer, and they have scenes from Psycho where she's driving the car and you just see it without sound. It's just like whatever. And as soon as you hit the music, the tension builds, it all builds. And it's just a great score. And Johnny is always bringing amazing game. It just makes the images that much stronger.
Serge, I mentioned music because I think there's a musicality to what you all do. I mean, there's got to be there's a dance with it, and I'm just curious if you could speak to that, especially obviously with focus pulling, in terms of do you find a musicality in that? Because you're kind of it's live, it's happening really in real time, and you're adjusting with the motion. Obviously, there's blocking and rehearsing, but I'm just curious if you can speak about the musicality to focus pulling.
Oh, it's a great question because I certainly underestimated it before being a part of this film because, like I said, we had music on dailies that, were kind of helped inform the theme. So yeah, it helps on rhythm of when and where to pull focus, and Paul's a huge collaborator as well. He likes input from everybody, even artistic input. So when you have a sense of what he's going for, then you can get in that rhythm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, when do you obviously we're in the middle of a shot. I mean, there's multiple takes at times. Do you find that flow state? Do you feel like you're you're almost operating like a drummer in a way where they just know where to go with it? Are you how do you find that flow state and feel it out?
I just keep Superfly playing in my head all day, all night, and that's how I operate. Curtis Mayfield.
I love that. I want to take a look at another shot as well. When I saw this shot for the first time, it blew my mind, and I want Mike to speak on this and the lens choice, but also just this is the shot we're in the helicopter with Sean Penn and the military as they're arriving, and also just the use of frame and the use of the cars as we're seeing them drive in the lower part of the frame with the high. There's so much image above the cars, and that happens later on as well when Sean Penn is delivering chase to the bounty hunter, and you have they're very small in the middle of the bottom of the frame with the large rock behind them. The use of the frame is just really interesting there. But I want to take a look at this sequence real quick in the helicopter.
Kevin, could I mention 2 quick things
Yeah.
real quick? One of these is related to the kind of the difficulties of all the different formats we have in finishing the film. You might notice that these clips have been pillar boxed for the people who are in the room. So what we're seeing is actually the full 150 VistaVision frame. They had asked me if we wanted it letterboxed for 185 as it is normal theatrically, and we said no. So we thought we were going to be filling the full TV image, but instead you guys are seeing basically the full frame of what was shot. So that's something interesting. So you will see even more of that image above the cars. The other thing to point out is that the dissolve you just saw, and there'll be a dissolve in this next clip too, those are in the VistaVision prints and in the 70 millimeter prints, those are photochemical dissolves that were done in printing by Photochem. And so here they're digital because they were scanned, but when you go to see the film on film, you see the first shots faded out as the film is being printed, and then they do a second pass on the print to fade up the B side of it. Wow. So that's just another little wrinkle that we like to make it more complicated.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really amazing. And we're gonna dive into the different formats here shortly as well. But let's take a look at this scene because I want to geek out about the lenses that you use in this scene. Take a look.
Intel update. Back 10 high school game.
First of all, the lens you're using in the helicopter, they're in the real helicopter during that sequence, which I want to mention because that's incredible to see, the immersion of that sequence. But speak about your choice on how to lens that sequence.
I mean, yeah, I was in the helicopter on that one because Colin Anderson was our camera operator, was down below getting the helicopter landing. So I can't remember. We're on something really wide.
Yeah, we had something custom made, and it got there in the nick of time, and I wish I could tell you the focal length.
For some reason, I thought it was 10, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think 10 too. I'm looking over her Rio, like, bail me out. She's like, hell no. I don't remember. Yeah, Dan Sasaki made us a custom lens that would fit that format. And like I said, we got it at the nick of time, and it was pretty slick. It was really shaky in there. Cameras were jamming every 50 feet. It was impossible.
Tana, for you, like the rig for that particular shot, can you speak to that?
Helicopters are always interesting because of the vibration. So anything that you screw in walks out. So sometimes you look in a helicopter afterwards, especially with the Blackhawks, and you'll see a couple of grub nuts or washers on the ground, and you're all like, But yeah, that was. Well, we did learn one neat thing. There's a device called a puppy paw. And these guys showed up with the helicopter. And we were all like, well, can we use the tracks? And they're like, yeah, but we don't have any puppy paws. The last film crew stole them. And they're these little twisting cam things that you can really secure a load really, really well. Well, we got them on Amazon, and they were there the next day, and we left them with a dozen. So we were in good form with those fellas.
And Mike, to the framing, like when you see that sequence on an IMAX 70 millimeter 143, having the cars smaller in the bottom of the frame and then having all of that space above, as I mentioned, it felt similar to the scene with Sean Penn and the bounty hunter, and just all the rock that's above the frame. Can you speak about those choices? Because as an audience member, I'm looking around, and that's how immersed I am. I'm like studying every aspect of the frame. But there's obviously a choice you make to leave that much room above the action that we're watching.
I mean, yeah, through the film framing-wise, it's all about like lots of taking advantage of that vertical space, like we were talking about earlier. And I think that was that the 1,000 mil or something? We were very, very far away from them. Like, I remember we shot that on like a Saturday or something, and I think we had like 1,000 or something. That was we were at least I don't know. It felt like we were a mile away. They were on a parallel road.
Yeah, at that point we had 1,000. We didn't have the 1,200 quite yet, and I think there may have been a 3-to-1 at play or an 11-to-1 with a doubler, so like 500. at 1,000, like 2 cameras. So I don't know if that shot was 1,000 or the 11.
It's an incredible sequence.
All this stuff was also at our first location too, so I think that's why we were kind of figuring everything out.
Yeah. This
and
was all
still getting the
Eureka.
lenses, and so yeah, all this stuff in Eureka was the first location. So we were just experimenting still.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts at that point still.
It's cool to have all of you together because there's the idea of when you're filming this movie that you know that it's going to be released in different formats. So we have the 150 with the VistaVision, the 185 with the 70 mil and the DCP. Then you have the IMAX 70 millimeter and 143. Then you have an IMAX 190. I mean, it's insane to think about that. So from a filming perspective, you have to be aware of that, obviously, and then the dailies obviously help you know where the image is going to be. And then from an editing perspective, you know that you're editing out to, because different parts of the image are going to appear in different formats. So Andy, can you speak about how the releasing formats kind of affected your editing, and obviously with the production on the day and the framing of all the shots? Like, so for example, that shot with the cars driving and all that space above, some of that's going to look different in different formats. So if you look at it in 70 mil or 190 or 143, can you speak about how those formats affected the edit and how you did that?
Yeah. Well, we scanned everything digitally. I think it's 4K and 6K. 6K for the VistaVision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had the full negative, at Photochem. We edited in just the 1:8:5 aspect ratio because we were watching the place where we work. My editing machine is like connected to a projector, my Avid. So we watch stuff big on a big projector, and that's how we, instead of a TV, which are in a lot of bays, we actually like view it on a big screen, which I think really helps the process of just having that like big screen experience and like good sound and stuff. So we really just edited the movie like normal, But one thing that we did was once we got closer, we did have Roundabout conform a version, because we were just starting to maybe do our first pass of color or whatever, and we had them render out a 1:50 aspect ratio.
Yeah, we basically had them render what we're watching here on this TV with the pillar boxes, so that we could check and see if there was anything that we hadn't been seeing that had been hidden. Because again, our 185, instead of cropping our 185 to make it bigger for IMAX, we did the opposite. We have this big tall frame that we're cropping for 185, and then we have all this negative that we're not looking at most of the time in the Avid. So
we knew it was easier to you want to edit in 185 because most people are going to be seeing it in 185, and that's like the smallest size it'll be. And we know that for the other formats, it'll get extended. So then it's figuring out, we did have to erase some booms and some, things on the ground, tape or whatever.
There was that shot of the cars actually had some perf shadows that was introduced in scanning. We weren't sure where it came from initially, but we inspected the negative and figured out it wasn't there. So we got it rescanned and it was fixed. But yeah, those are kind of things we didn't know about until we saw them.
Yeah.
And Mike, for you, when you see, obviously, when you see the different formats of the film, and you see, I'm curious what your experience is as the cinematographer watching it in different formats, and kind of the images you took and filmed on that day, and how they're slightly changed throughout the different formats, and certain aspects of the frame aren't there in certain formats. Like, what's that experience like for you to see it like that?
I think to me the bigger part is like when you see like a DCP versus the VistaVision, and you see the photochemical print versus the digital projection is really where I notice the biggest difference as far as like from an experience point of view, like how it handles contrast and colors and things. It's just when we saw the premiere at the Chinese, it was and then saw it the next day on Vista, and it was very striking how. It's not like wildly different, but it's definitely it evokes a different experience for certain.
I mean, as we sit in the Kodak House, we think about filming in film, and then obviously projecting on film. There's nothing like it. I know Spielberg talks a lot about it beautifully, where he talks about the idea of, film being a chemical miracle in a way. And you can see the grain swimming on the frame. But obviously when you're shooting in VistaVision, you have a more clear image in the sense of less grain than normal 35. Can you speak about just your love of film in general and film capturing on film, and also projecting in film, and kind of what that means to you as a cinematographer in a digital age?
I think film is, I've been very fortunate in my career to do a lot on film before and see kind of how digital has come in. And you can do incredible things with digital. Obviously, people are doing amazing stuff, but I think the photochemical process in it's just, like for example, on this, you asked earlier about film stocks, and we used our, 19 and 07, and we used pretty much everything Kodak makes, as far as their 4 primary stocks. And it was a lot of it was pushing and, getting, the nice thing about the VistaVision with the big negative is we could easily push it a stop. We pushed it 2 stops. We even did a test where we pushed it 3 stops just to see what that looked like, and it was very unusual. Wasn't for this, but it was just something, how far you could take it, because normally on Vista you get this, it's designed to get a, like you said, a very gorgeous image, but when your reference is the French Connection, you really want, Paul's all about like making sure things have character and texture and all that, and so we were pushing the film. We were using low cons. The lenses themselves bring so much to the party, and we're carrying like 4 50-millimeter lenses. Each had different characteristics to them, and so that it's just kind of developing that language into what Andy said earlier. When we were starting to shoot the film in Eureka, we're still very much kicking the tires, and just trying to get the scale and scope of this thing, and how are we going to keep doing this, and you just start doing it. And and the good thing about with Paul is that if something doesn't work, you go back and you do it again, and that's just, they've built that into the production process. So I guess what people would consider reshoots, or we got to go back and redo that as a failure, like, oh, we screwed something up. No, it's like, I can get a better performance out of them. Hey, I rewrote this scene differently. And that is a very, I guess, liberating thing kind of as a filmmaker, because, we went back to Sensei's at least twice. The arrival at the Sisters of the Brave Beaver, we shot that over repeatedly. Same scene. Yeah, we've shot scenes that aren't in the film. It's just like, I think what's interesting about it, what I could say about Paul is he's not, people will shoot a whole movie, like you'll get everything they can, but he's not precious about it. If something doesn't work, boop, it's gone. And you'll be like, oh, what happened to that? He's like, well, did you miss it? No. Okay, cool. So, and that's a testament to, you guys, it's just like you're just making the best movie possible,
I was just going to add, one of the special things about being at the Kodak House for your audience that's going to listen to this, Kevin, is that we end up with audience members who are huge contributors to the movie. Yeah. And we have Photochem represented here today with Andrew Oren, who's sitting in the audience. We have...
You killed it!
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions about what pushing and pulling is in processing, he can speak to that. But Taylor Umfenauer is also here, who projected the film in both VistaVision and IMAX 70mm. And Serge has referenced Rio a few times, who is the second AC here, and she's also here. And we even have the post supervisor here today. So, there's a lot of, that's what's so special about this conversation, and the references that I think your audience will end up hearing to these people who are sitting around us. But Photochem is one of the few labs in the world that can support, and the only lab in the world that can support the 70mm part of this journey here. And so what Paul does takes these, very finite labs that are left in the world that can support it. So.
And that's a great transition, because Andy and Jay, I want to speak to you, because this is this film is finished entirely photochemically, which is very rare these days, and obviously Photochem, a huge part of that, which is a really interesting thing. But can you talk about why that's so rare and why it's so important? Because for people, when they see the VistaVision print of this movie, that's cut from the original camera negative. Everything else is manipulated in a certain way. But can you speak a little bit about finishing entirely photochemically with the edit, and kind of why that's so rare, but also why it's so important to the film?
Well, I'll let Jay speak of the technical part of it. But I think we all know, just Paul loves film so much. He has a projector at his house where he's watching 35 millimeter movies. He just likes that feeling, and he likes that photochemical look. And it is about the imperfections of photochemical. It's not perfect. It's not crystal clear like if you're watching something on Netflix. So and you also have to get it right in the camera when you shoot it. You can't. We're not doing a lot of manipulation in the color or in doing quote unquote windows to like brighten things up. It's like you got to get it right when you shoot it.
Or visual effects.
Yeah, we're not even doing that many visual effects. So, but yeah, the finishing of this was very complicated. Thanks to Erica Frauman, our post supervisor, and Andrew.
Give it up, Erica.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't try
Yeah.
to do this. Don't try to do all this mixed format stuff without her.
We're
man.
all big Erica fans here. Yes.
But yeah, you should talk about kind of once we locked the movie, how it ended up in the Vista.
Yeah, the VistaVision, most of the movie is shot in VistaVision, but we did have some visual effects where we had to like paint out, we were shooting with multiple cameras, had to paint out a camera, or, there are a few other things that we did, but those shots, we need negative that we can cut against the original camera negative that came from the VistaVision camera and the Super 35 camera. So we did a lot of testing with Photochem to try to figure out how we were going to do this. We didn't know if it was going to be, there's a film recorder that could record to IMAX or could record to 5x 70 millimeter for visual effects. So we tried filming those things out and then optically reducing them to VistaVision. We just had to somehow make a negative that was 8 perfs wide and 35 millimeters that we could cut against our original negative. In the end, Andrew and Photochem found a film recorder that worked with VistaVision that I think had been just sitting at Warner Brothers, and they were able to get it up and running. We didn't know when we started this movie, we didn't think that was going to be possible, but it ended up working great because it created an image that matched really well with the original camera negative, or the best we could with all the things we tested. So after Andy makes all the editing choices, we make a list of basically what negative goes in each shot, and then our negative cutters would take that list and against.
Well, we cut work print first.
We made a work print. Andrew, Bluestain, made our work print from the list so we could project that, check it, make sure it was the way we wanted it to be. We were using all the right shots, and then they cut the negative and spliced it together and made prints.
And we have Andrew here, so why not get Andrew's take on this a little bit? Can we get Andrew a mic just to kind of speak to this process? If you don't mind, Andrew, I'm putting you on the spot, but I mean, to have you in the audience is cool. Can you give your perspective on that process?
Sure. Well, you laid it out neatly about having to get a complete negative in VistaVision in order to be able to cut together VistaVision and make prints from VistaVision negative. Before this VistaVision film recorder kind of magically appeared, we were going through duplicate negative processes to get all the shots that didn't originate in VistaVision in camera to VistaVision. So it meant that ultimately the VistaVision prints that you would have seen would have been more from duplicate negative than from original negative. Getting this VistaVision film recorder online, and it was important, it was an Arri laser film recorder, and those recorders film out to 2254 intermediate stock, and that's stock that Kodak made for Arri laser film recorders. It has great absence of crosstalk. Our other film recorders that we use in 65 millimeter, they're not able to film out onto intermediate stock. They can't take advantage of the technology of a laser film recorder and the technology of the intermediate stock that Kodak made for laser film recorders. They film out onto original camera negative, and it's imperfect. It's not as good as the intermediate stock film outs that we can do on a laser recorder. So when this laser recorder came online, and it was at the 11th hour, I mean, we were neck cutting when it came online. We were then able to cut those new intermediates in with the original negative and have a VistaVision print that looked like it was coming completely from original negative. And not only that, we were then able to before we were going to do that, we were going to actually do an interpositive negative cut, because we needed to get everything to interpositive and then cut together all the pieces in interpositive. We were able to make from the VistaVision cut negative a VistaVision interpositive. That's like a print from the VistaVision negative. And then we were able to blow that up to 5-perf duplicate negative for the 70 millimeter prints. And we'd actually gotten, this happened so late in the game that we had already made a digital negative of the 5-perf version because we needed something to make release prints from for the 70 millimeter theaters, and we replaced it completely with the optical blow-up of the 70 millimeter because the image quality was just different. It just suited this film so much more to be completely analog.
We always like to say that, yes, thank you, Andrew, amazing.
I think I understood 10% of that.
We always say that each version of the movie, each format is just its own experience. They're never all going to look the same. You know, the DCP looks good in its own way.
40X.
There's the 40X, exactly.
40X.
There's
40X.
But the 70, the IMAX 70, the regular 70, they all just have a different texture to it. Yeah. So, and Paul's never been like so precious that it all has to look exactly the same. It's like he realizes that it's an imperfect process, and that, you know, whatever way you see it, you know, as long as the story's good and the characters and everything, the sound, you know.
We just wanted each version to be the best it could be in that format.
Yeah.
And so Andrew fielded many calls from us where we started off with like, hey, we had an idea. And so we've tried pretty much anything anybody could think of over the last 2 years to get this to work, and hopefully I think it turned out great.
All right, we are going to get to the River of Hills sequence because that I want to nerd out about, but I do want to show a quick sequence real fast that I love, and I want to talk to Mike a little bit about the lighting as well in this sequence, and kind of, this is the scene where DiCaprio's character is exiting the hospital. He has been arrested, and he's been helped to get out of the hospital. Andy, do you mind setting this up just for the audience?
Actually, maybe Jay should do it because I don't quite know where this starts.
Yeah, this just starts with him in the hospital. He's been tipped off that maybe he is getting some help from the local nurses, and it's going to go from there.
Let's take a look.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. Mr. Parker, here's your restroom, okay? Let's check your sugar. You are going to go through the bathroom, straight down the hall to the right, to the fire escape right now.
Did Benicio del Toro really take a selfie in that moment? And where is that picture?
You can see it on the internet.
Yeah, they released it like a couple weeks ago online.
Yeah.
Did that's so cool. I mean, that particular sequence, obviously. I want to talk, Tana, about the rig specifically in the car as we follow DiCaprio's coming into Sensei's car. But like, talk about your memories of filming that sequence. I don't know. That shot is incredible. I love that whole sequence. But your memories of that.
So that was a 6-foot slider rigged perpendicularly to the door, Sensei's door, and braced up pretty bona fide, with a remote head, and Mango, our dolly grip, and James, my best, would support the end of the rig, and Mango pushed in ever so slowly. We see that little push in, particularly when doing the selfie. And then, boom, locks it off twice because then Benicio takes off, and we just cross our fingers that, because he's, you know, basically 12 feet wide. And he zips around the block and comes back, and each time it's still on there. So I'm like,
Serge, oh yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that was, and it wasn't just like a lightweight remote head. I mean, that was a Matrix head, right? Yeah, and so it was like, I mean, it was heavy. It was a lot going on there, and the rig was crazy. And we were also doing a stop pull because remember there was a storm coming in, and it was like the wind was blowing super hard, and it was like there was lightning, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to get the shot. And yeah, so like it's interesting because can't remember how many takes we did. I mean, I think a decent amount.
Something like
you know?
8 or 10.
Yeah,
Was it
and
really?
yeah, I think it was because you can see that the light's changing because like when he's holding up the pager, you see like the dome light. or I don't know, some indicator light inside the car that's starting to illuminate his hand. So it must have been one of the later takes. But it was, yeah, it was just like, you know, to what Serge said earlier, it's like pit crews get it together, and it's a crazy rig. I mean, I'm sure the neighbors thought we were
when
nuts.
Paul would show, like, you know, get his little finder of sorts and put it where, you know, just show us where you want the camera, you know, we'll figure it out. And he was there, and then he took a step back, and I took a step back. And can we be here? It's
Nope.
humanly possible.
You guys seen Nope? Nope.
Serge, what was
That was
your...
my instincts with Paul all the time, but then, like, actually, yes, you can do this.
Well, what is your perspective and memory of that sequence?
Yeah, there was a lightning storm imminent, wind everywhere. I was chasing after, as the car pulled out, I'm chasing after to try to keep reception with Comtech and just guess focus based on the dialogue. So, and then they disappear and come back. Hope they didn't take anything out with that 6-foot camera strapped to the side of it, walking, you know, through the neighborhood and then come back around. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Incredible. All right, we got to get to this scene. I think this is arguably one of the greatest car chase sequences set to film I've ever seen. And I think a lot of it has to do with the narrative aspect of it, the editing of it, the music of it, the way this is filmed, the lens choices. Serge, I'm going to be nerding out with you a lot about this sequence because I am still blown away by it. And seeing this in 1:4:3 IMAX 70mm is, you feel like you're on a roller coaster, genuinely. And it is, I don't even have the words to describe like the feeling I had, the immersion I felt watching the sequence in theaters. And I hope the TV screen can do it some justice because it's just remarkable filmmaking on every single level. Let's take a look at the River of Hills sequence. Take a look.
Crazy.
I have 55 questions about that. That is incredible. Mike, first, decisions on your lens choices for that sequence. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot more going on there, but that there's something about that makes you feel like you're on a roller coaster, genuinely, as an audience member, emotionally, but also physically. So I'm curious if you could just speak to.
I mean, just broadly, well, for starters, I think just to what you were saying earlier, that's just a great example, just watching it now, just of like, A, what you guys did edited already, but just the score, and Johnny's score in that is insane. You know, when we found, when Michael Glazier, the location manager, and they found that set of hills, and we did a lot of tests where we were just in a car with an iPhone just to kind of see distances and things like that. But, I mean, that was just days and days and days of shooting and long lenses on the side of the road and different, basically everything Alan Padelford had. We did some tests at his place for stuff, and that's really when we started experimenting with like what kind of zooms to use and things like that when we were at his shop. But you had a lot of footage. I'll put it that way, you know?
Serge, we were geeking out backstage. I think the shot when we're with Willa and her car is going down the hill, and then my eye went to the top of the hill waiting for the car to follow her, but then her car reemerges in the foreground in the shot. That is one of the most incredible shots I've ever seen, and I was wondering if you could speak to that, because as an audience member, I was waiting for the other car, which I don't know if that's the intention, but then when she reappears in the foreground, I just was like, it blew my mind, and I was wondering if your memory of that shot particularly.
Yeah, the repetitions were the key. It was the intention to have that time out like that. So, we had the brilliant Adam Somner as our first AD, who coordinated and communicated beautifully to the other drivers to try to just get these timings out right. But we spent a lot of time to try to get timings like that to occur. And, I didn't always know when it was going to come, so I kind of had to guess where to be and get lucky more often than not. One thing we learned is that we could be going 120 miles an hour. If we had an 11-1 on there at like a 500 millimeter, it's going to look like we're going 10 miles an hour. So we started getting wider and wider to like help generate the speed, but then kind of put the tight lenses back on because it like gave this kind of sinister feel, and it gave the hills themselves like agency as a character, which is why sometimes I just sneak a little focus pull into the actual asphalt. And
So sick.
I was talking to him the other day, Paul, and he was like, "Yeah, when we were doing that, when you were racking to the tops of the hills." He's like, "Yeah, we did." I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm tell Serge to stop doing this."
Yeah, I was like,
and
I ain't listening
it's
to
like
him.
one of the things. It's an image that everyone talks about that.
And Serge, to your point about the knowing where the cars were, like there is, if I remember correctly, in that sequence, we have there's one shot where all three of them are in the same shot. Mm-hmm. What was your memory of getting you and Mike capturing that?
There's a lot of options to choose from, and I think they selected correctly.
But the timing of that.
That was like a signature shot that was going to be in the movie. Like he wanted all three cars to be in that shot. So that was just getting the timing right. Exactly. Really.
And, it worked perfectly in that take because there were a bunch that it did not work. Yeah, you only need one take. Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's no green screen in that sequence, which I want to point out. Tana, can you speak about your rigs for each car? And one thing I've mentioned, Andy, to you and Jay backstage, the sound design in that scene is remarkable. And it reminds me a lot of Terminator 2, where Edward Furlong and Arnold are, like, their bikes are being edited in between. And Arnold's bike is like this growling, fatherly, deep sound. And then Edward's is like this like high-pitched
the little mosquito.
Yeah, and so when I watch this scene, I think about that with the sound of DiCaprio's car has that like rattle to it, and then you have the growling of the sports cars. That is remarkable. But just can you speak to that as well?
Yeah, that was another case where we tried to grab all the good car sounds that were recorded on set, and they did take those cars out and get some like wild tracks of the cars driving around. And then we, again, sent it to Skywalker Sound, and they goosed those things up to really, make them sound great. But
yeah, the sequence is longer when we were first putting it together, more shots. And so when we had it, like kind of the basic structure of it, that's when we send it to Skywalker so that they could kind of build just an initial kind of pass of all the sounds, just because, as I was saying with the other chase, the sound is such a big part of this sequence.
But this one has score and that one didn't.
Exactly, yeah. And there's also like this, we kept calling it like road noise. It's kind of like it's this noise of like when the tires are on
the asphalt,
rubbing the asphalt or whatever, this kind of just tone.
And
so that
it was
another
over 100
thing.
degrees.
Yes, exactly. So that was another like kind of element that we added to kind of punctuate the like ups and downs. And then of course in the score too, the violins are like going up and down, and you're hearing kind of like a wave in the score as well. So it's just always trying to figure out how can we add extra layers and make stuff more dynamic. And even in the mix at the very end, we were
and then in the mix, a lot of it was like taking things away, so you could see, like in this shot, it's about the noise of the car. In this shot, it's more about the score, and then like the wind, and we tried to kind of figure out what was going to be the hero sound in each part of
It's
it.
so cool. And Tana, for you, like the different rigs that were created for each shot, because you have shots that are forward facing, you have shots that are, there's different. I mean, the way that's cut back and forth. There's obviously a narrative rhythm to it along with the music, but can you speak about designing, and kind of how that works?
Well, the most important thing to do when you're setting up stuff like that, when you pit the car, like where you're putting your rigs on, have it facing the direction that you shoot in, because then everyone can work at the same time. Mikey can look at it and like, oh yeah, I like this, that, with the windshield. So that's key. It was super dusty and well over 100 degrees, and it was kind of like a grip paradise. It was just like so many, we built these lightweight screens that we could put over because you couldn't even touch the metal. It was so hot. So they could pit, and they drive them forward enough just so the light's coming in, so everybody's doing their thing. There was 2 or 3 cameras at a time we would mount or just have some plates ready. There was also a lot of biscuit work.
Explain the biscuit work to the audience.
Biscuit, well, do you know what a process trailer is? So imagine a process trailer without the insert car pulling it. So it's like a flatbed with a repositionable pod that you can put that wherever you want. So we're facing forward, we'll put the pod in the back. That way actors can act and safely, and we can drive faster, and it's just the way to go. So there was a lot of biscuit work, and there was a lot of arm car work, and some of the hill were accentuated. Now we've got a lot more assholes and elbows, because the arm goes up and down, the head is moving, he's moving in and out with focus and whatnot. So there's just a lot of more things to the party there.
I'm not going to let you go yet because when Chase closes the door in that sequence, and I speak a lot about the narrative and reasons for situations, that to me, I feel like she's propelling her arc forward, literally with that shot. Mike and Tana, can you speak about that door closing? Because and you'll notice throughout the film that doors closing are an interesting thing. There's that shot when Leo backs up and his car door closes on its own. Very interesting. But can you speak to that shot of Chase closing the door? And this is, for people listening at home, this is right after Chase gets the keys and gets back in the car and propels into that River of Hills sequence. But what was that rig like?
Well, okay, so she free drove on that. We discussed doing it in a lot of different ways, but it was not a very long spell, so she did free drive on that section. And so it's just a side mount on the driver's door. Door's open, she gets in, we see her sitting down there, and just the momentum of peeling out slams the door, and you can see it kind of. And that was another thing. Paul didn't like anything too rigid. You see a lot of them where just a lot of vibrato. So we'd get it, and then he'd take a look, and he said, So we would take out bolts and this and that and loosen it up. And at some points, it was just like, okay, you got to leave one,
And Mike, your perspective on that shot, because again, I keep saying this, but that there's a reason for that. We are propelled forward with the character, and obviously, what's your perception of that?
The camera on the door has been something that we've done with Paul since we did it on Inherent Vice, and on Licorice Pizza and stuff. So it just was much. I think it was way more pronounced on this because usually the door closes and the car doesn't usually drive forward. It just is the start of a scene. But this was, most of the time it would close. We were right off into the races, which was interesting, and also the kind of cameras we were putting on in these cars. What they were. I mean, most doors are not designed to have that kind of weight hanging off the side of it. I'll put it that way. So that has its own challenges.
Yeah, and just the editing, everything about that sequence. We are going to open it up to the audience here, but I have one more quick question. I'm always fascinated when a title card comes into the movie and where it comes into the film. I mean, sometimes you have movies with the title cards right at the beginning. Sometimes it's 20, 30 minutes in. And I remember correctly, it's on Alana Haim's character. She's walking, and then the one battle after another hits. Can you speak about that decision and talking with Paul about where that was going to come in? And kind of how you wanted it to be framed with Alana's walk.
It just kind of came organically. We did try it at the beginning of the movie for a little while, and it just, I don't know. It just, we didn't want it to be too far past where it currently is. Like, I guess there's an argument that you could have put it after the prologue, but that would have been 35 minutes into the movie. That's too long. So. We decided to try it there, and it stuck there. And it also kind of hits with like the Johnny score, and they're kind of. It kind of worked with like the voiceover we put in there too. Like Leo kind of is. It's not really voiceover, I guess it's kind of like off camera where he's talking about like what they're going to do.
Yeah, he says one battle after another, right?
Yeah, so it kind of just fits that moment.
I always find that moment interesting when the character says the title of the movie in the movie. And obviously they have to be aware that that's happening. It's an interesting thing I always found like in filmmaking.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't always there. I mean, the title had changed. The title was Battle of Baxter and Cross for a while and everything. So we actually put that voiceover in later, like in post, to kind of set up. We kind of wanted to let the audience know that they weren't going to be planting these bombs and like killing a whole bunch of people, because he says they're going to go off like after hours. So we didn't want to show. We didn't want to telegraph that they were like full terrorists that were going to just bomb a building full of people. So that kind of how it evolved, and then we added the part about the one battle after another too. So.
Okay, I lied. One more quick question, Mike. For Tana's running sequences, like you and Colin, and can you speak about how you film those and kind of like they're tight shots, but they're also very momentous in a way. We're moving along. Obviously, it's a propelling. I think she's going left to right, kind of a David Lean style in a way, which is the journey of the character. Can you speak a little bit about how you captured the running shots?
I mean, we were just pretty much did that on a Patriot cart, running with her on the various things, like when they escape from the car, when they left, when the bank heist goes bad, that was just a really long dolly to get in the cart. When she's just running, the
Talking
moments.
about Tana sprinting, or are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, there was multiple running shots where she has the gum in her mouth when she's chewing the gum, like during that running. Yeah, just
That's all Patriot.
Yeah.
That is
Steady cam.
it's
Steady
a-
cam on
mounted
Patriot.
to
Yeah,
the
it's a
Patriot.
little electric
Full
cart.
sprint. Then
with
she
a-
throws up on the sidewalk after because she
Yeah,
doesn't
she was pretty beat
understand,
down
like,
by then.
Running 600s in a row is not easy, my guy. Like,
Yeah.
Was the gum a choice? Was that always was that just part of what? How, that was
her. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, audience questions. I'm done nerding out. You guys, please join in here. Do I just call on somebody? All right. So, and if you don't mind, this is on the podcast. So if you want to say your name, and you don't have to, but just definitely speak into the mic for sure.
Okay, my name is Ramez. First and foremost, congrats. This first movie that made me cry tears of joy in the theater. It was beautiful. Saw it 3 times. I actually have 2 questions. Can I ask 2 really quickly?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
it's
man,
different.
yeah.
There's so many of you up here, and I have a million questions. But the first question is, how much, this is actually to Andy and Jay, how much of this film was this intercut? Like you mentioned the DNA sequence at one point was not intercut. I just find that there's such this kinetic rhythm that is so rare in any film. This entire movie's sort of intercut. There's actually very few scenes I can remember that actually even play as full scenes. So can you speak at all to was that experimentation? Was that fully intentional the entire time? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, certainly, I think in the script there was some intercutting. Like I'm thinking of the sensei sequence. We're following the character or the MKU, and they're trying to find Willa, and then we're also following Bob and going up the stairs to Sensei's house, and then following the immigrants down. So it was kind of already built into the script, but it was just trying to find what more can we do? How can we continue to amp it up even more so that when they do, when the MKU comes around the corner, we want that to happen right after, Bob and Sensei, he does the Viva la Revolution, and goes under the hatch, and the rug unfurls. So
Which
it
is
was
such a cool thing.
We want all of that to happen at the same time. So I don't know if that was exactly how it was, but it was just trying to experiment to just make it feel dynamic. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. And then second question, I'll try to be quick. I really, really love how messy and raw this feels, even though it's shot on VistaVision. There's so many times where, to go to the shot you were just talking about, Kevin, with Willa closing the door, it starts pretty overexposed. And I love that aspect. And I think Michael and also Serge, if you could speak to obviously there's an intentionality there, but I think it's an intentionality that I feel only film can kind of afford you. That kind of range of pushing it that way and allowing it to kind of beautifully blow out rather than kind of digitally fall apart.
Yeah, there was a lot of tricky exposures on this. Some stuff that we had to be really, is trying to be really precise on. I generally in the workflow, I'll meter a ton, but then also take a lot of exposure photographs just to kind of get, so probably have 9,000 photos on this job. But, overexposure, again, it goes to when your North Star is the French Connection, and you really want it, and the last detail and some of these other classic 70s cinema movies, the rawness of it, the underexposure, the fact that we're pushing, it was, let's be 2 stops over, 3 stops over, 4 stops over, let's just let it go. underexposure also was really like a big thing. A lot of times, Leo's close-up, especially when he's in the house talking to Willa, I mean, he's silhouette, you know, and we're just exposing, you know, we've got the curtain behind him and things like that. So again, it goes to the fact that it was just like, let's really loosen the bolts a bit, whether it's on how tight the camera's tied down or what the exposures are. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Just over here. Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Just to get familiar with like knowing your tools in the right setting and whatnot, what are times that you guys found yourselves going to Super 35? Like, is it in the crash cam box? I think I've only seen that in maybe a Super 35 kind of like setting. And then besides that, the custom 10 that we see in the helicopter, is that what you guys are kind of using against that pavement and that hill setup?
That was all Vista, right? Yeah.
The Super 35 is more for like intimate
Dialogue.
scenes, like the scenes in
The phone call.
Yeah, a little bit of that, but also the cabin in the woods with Willa and Bob. Just because you're at the table and you know, especially kind of an intimate scene, and the camera was loud, so that was something that we could use the Super 35 in. And I think there was a crash cam that was used for that as well.
Yeah.
Crash cams were always Super 35.
Particularly in the Suburban or the Tahoe that rolled down the hill and all that. That was.
Yeah, which that was real. Like we crashed 2 cars, right?
Yeah.
2 Suburbans.
Yeah.
That low is on VistaVision still. Is that on the custom 10? It just seems so wide, like almost like an 8R.
No, I think we had a zoom that could
It's a
get
short
to,
zoom, right?
to 15.
Yeah.
The 10 was just that helicopter shot. It was one and done.
I think the thing I was going to say is just that we used a lot of Alan Padelfer has an elevator rig, which is, you know, which can get I think I'd probably get almost the closest down to the ground. And so we would run with that and with his arm car for all the River of Hills stuff. And those are really the 2 workhorses of that sequence.
Yeah, the rig with the elevator on it it's not a in-picture elevator. It's this souped-up Subaru that's super slammed and can haul ass. So we use that in the city, too, a lot, on the sidewalk, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So being a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, you know, we watched him collaborate with Ellswood for many years, and then it was interesting to see him sort of form this collaboration with you, Mike. And you know, I've watched all the YouTube videos. There's the great one of you on Phantom Thread with Colin Anderson, and that's great. But I was curious, so it looks like on Phantom Thread, he's credited as the DP, but it sounded almost like you were both the DP.
There really isn't a DP credited on that. I mean,
okay.
for some reason, I would say, I don't know. I'm credit. So that the big inspiration for that movie was Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick's film.
Yeah.
And on that, he took a title of John Alcott, who shot it, took a title of lighting cameraman. And since we were shooting in Britain, we were like, oh, this should really be a nod to that. And we were kind of working in the English system because we were in England. And so I took a credit as a lighting cameraman, and that's kind of how that came about. It's interesting but when we came over here, for various reasons, the union requires that you have a director of photography as credit.
This was my question, because then on Licorice Pizza, you're both the DPs, and then now this, when the credits started, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see this dual DP credit, and it just had you. I was like, oh, what's the story with that?
I have compromising photos of him, I guess. No, I mean, look, like you just said, our relationship evolves, and you know, in fact, this journey kind of both started to go to what Andy was saying earlier on the Radiohead stuff. You know, like all those music videos were tests, but they were also tests not just of film stock and techniques and things, but also just like how can we adjust the workflow to something that, you know, he's more comfortable with, I guess. And so, you know, when we did the Radiohead video for, I can't remember what it was, the one with all the doors, you know, he was like, hey, what do you think if we did this on a movie? And, you know, just worked without, and it wasn't knocking, like he's not anti-cinematographer, he just is like, this is kind of where his workflow is at. And so, Yeah.
Was he any less involved in this movie? Was he
I mean,
any more hands
Paul's
off as a
fingerprints.
deep-
No, Paul's finger. To be really straight up, his fingerprints are on every frame of this film, as they are. Like he definitely is very knowledgeable in lenses. Like he and Dan Sasaki are geeking out for a year in advance, and I mean, and still doing it during the production. He's involved in every facet in set decoration and costumes, and I mean, it's a very clear vision. So it's like the workflow really, I wouldn't say changed too dramatically. I mean, Colin Anderson's a huge contributor to this, who's not here today, but he, he's done 6 movies with Paul, and starting with There Will Be Blood. So it's like, it's just this is the to what you said earlier, Andy, just kind of like the film family component. This is the structure that he, I think, feels the most creatively fluid with.
Yeah, and we are supporting this, vision.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Carter, and I have a question for Mike, which is based off the first scene when they raid the camp. A lot of it looks like it was practically done or was within the scene with like the blues and oranges of the sodium vapors and mercury halide lights. I was just wondering how the approach to lighting a scene was, whether it be relying on practicals only or going very much in depth. And yeah, I just want to gauge with that.
It's a great question. I mean, I think like a lot of it, for that particular sequence, we had shot a different version of it earlier in the schedule, and then kind of went down and ended up down at the border. That location had a lot of limitations and parameters because we were literally right next to the border. But one of the things was just like kind of this to set the tone at the movie was like we do a lot. There was a lot of practicals in there, but we also augmented a lot of stuff. Just what was challenging about that scene going to the exposure thing was the fact that it was lit a lot, especially a lot of the walkways was with LED like whacker lights that they use for road construction, and they don't have any sort of control over intensity. So Tana and Justin and Gavry had like all those ND frames that we were slamming up on this stuff just to kind of get the exposure to a certain good part, because you also had to balance for the fireworks that were going to come in later, and just kind of how to match that, to get that all into a space that it could work. And obviously it's there's the end section where they've got lockjaw and everything is very overexposed. It's just a very that part of the film when we talked about is just like, it's a lot of conversations also with the set decoration team, and just because there was like silver blankets on the ground which reflect light, very interesting. The interiors of the tents and things like this. You have a lot of conversations about like, hey, what do we got for what kind of practical should we do, and how overexposed should they be, and what wattage should they be, and all this kind of thing. And it's just kind of you're trying to build a palette off of that. There's a close-up of Leo as he's planting explosives, and like all the practicals behind him were just what was there. And so I don't know what we shot that at. It must have been one of the lenses, maybe it was the 50 or something that was like a 1.1 or something. I mean, it was really pushing the outer ends of optically what the glass we had could achieve at times, which is only a testament to this gentleman right here, because he friggin' killed it on this thing as far as focus. So.
Oh yeah.
Hi, my name is Solomon. Just a question maybe for all of you. How much of the film, or potentially even the story, fundamentally changed in the collaboration, both with you guys and with the actors?
I'll take a stab just from being on set. We were very. What was really interesting is like compared to other Paul movies this was when he had a group of actors who were really bringing a lot of game to the table, and I think he had a really strong structure. But Leo, Sensei, everybody was just bringing interesting interpretations, and there were so many magical moments that we had to be ready to capture that would just happen. Like, for example, I mean, there's a million of them, but like, for example, when he's making the phone call to Sensei, he's making the phone call in Sensei's apartment the second time, and he's talking to the guy, and hey, I think we got off on the wrong foot and all that. He comes running into the place, and he goes over to close the curtains, and the curtains fall down. That was not intended. Normally that'd be like, curtains fall down, all right, cut, reset the curtains. Just went with it. And it added just that energy to the thing. And it's like there's so many moments throughout the film, little things that happened on set that it's just, I mean, you were looking at everything, but you could see like the first take would be like, okay, this is cool, and then other things would happen, which would just be you could pull from, you know.
The curtain thing makes sense for the character. It's so perfect.
It was just,
Yeah,
it
it
was
did.
poorly
It did.
rigged, and
Yeah.
boom, it went down.
That was probably something we watched in Dailies too, and everyone laughed. And so we were like,
Yeah.
oh, that'll be a good thing to keep in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because we actually shot for, 2 months, and then we had a hiatus for 2
Yeah.
months, and then we shot the River of Hills, or all the desert stuff, everything in the cars, and the Sensei section. So I think actually in that hiatus as well, things kind of evolved with
Yep.
the Sensei section, like with Benicio and figuring all that out. So, you know, the script was always kind of how it was, but it
Yes.
was just all the nuances and I think extra things with the immigrants and the River of Hills wasn't fully like formed exactly how it was going to be. It was just kind of like loosely in the script there was going to be a chase, but it wasn't specifically mapped out exactly.
Chaos TBD. Wasn't that?
I
in the
guess
script or
so.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a little bit. It was not exactly that, but
Okay.
it was. We didn't really know exactly what it was going to be.
I mean, speaking to the hiatus thing, I know it sounds like kind of a drag. You're doing it, and then you stop, and then get back at it. It actually was brilliant, is we had a minute to actually water the beast, and when it came back at it, it was like raring to go. So if you ever have a chance to organize your projects like that.
And we actually we cut all the stuff that we had shot in the first couple months, which was most of the prologue.
Yeah.
So that was a great thing. We actually had like everybody over to the cutting room to watch it and to kind of be, okay, so this is the beginning of the movie, and then this is how it's going to evolve. So that was really helpful too, just to get ready for the second part of the shoot, you know, and especially for the Sensei section, because that's going to really connect the first part and the last part of the movie.
The other thing is Paul, you know, would get these locals that were acting in it, and they also, you know, changed the trajectory, you know, and they were just doing their thing, and they're, you know, it's nothing like the real thing.
Like the skateboarders were real people.
yeah,
the nurses,
Bluto.
The nurse
yeah,
in the
guy who
hospital,
opens,
that's
you know,
the nurse from the hospital.
The nurse from the hospital, yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
yeah.
I just have to call out that this audience member is actually dressed as Bob in full
Bravo.
bathrobe and ski cap. So we had to
Nice.
make sure he got a mic. So here we go.
Thank you. Now I'm nervous. I'm always nervous. Thank you guys for coming. I'm Del. You guys are amazing. I saw this movie on at 10:55 p.m. Wednesday night, and I had a coffee and energy drink, and I didn't use it the entire time because I was so glued to the VistaVision screen. Anyways, I wanted to talk about the first time we meet the Christmas adventurers, because constantly the film is moving, but this is the first time it's like still, and we're in this place where it's like underground. And I wanted to ask how you guys captured the eeriness of that scene, because while it was no moving, and then even though there was chaos right before with Bob's character, I was still unsettled the whole time, despite how still and how everything was in that scene. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I think, yeah, if this movie was going 100 miles an hour for 2.5 hours, it would
You'd be blown
you'd be
out.
exhausted. Yeah, and there needs to be these like peaks and valleys, or else you're not going to feel the peaks if you don't have the valleys. So I think just the idea for those was just, while you guys were shooting it, for it to be always kind of very still, the camera's not really moving, just more about the close-ups, more about the performances, and just kind of letting the audience breathe, and so that
Letting
was...
the crew breathe.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I think the Christmas Adventure scenes were kind of placed in spots so that the audience could breathe and kind of just like catch the breath and then kind of help launch us into like the next part of the movie. So
I think also like the fact that the guy drives up to the house, goes in the house, goes down the stairs, walks down this long ass hallway at like, how is this even under this house, And then he does, I don't know if you caught it, but he knocks out Jingle Bells on the door. And then, it's just a very interesting setup and then going into this ornate room where there's a diorama in the background is just, it just, like to what you just said, it's just such an unusual journey just to get to that part of that, where that scene starts is a wild
and the actors are so good too. I
Yeah.
mean, they commit 100% to the lines. and they're not doing it with any sense of real comedy. I feel like they completely believe it, and that's what makes it work so well, and that's why people laugh.
Yeah. One more quick thing: the life moment, life when he looks up. Like, was that part of the script? Did that happen organically?
I don't remember.
I think I think that might have happened organically. It was just like we were in some take, and it's just like, yeah, bam, and life.
Before we go, do we have any of those BTS photos we want to show just real quick? Or if not, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to see. Okay, we don't have them. Okay, but look them up online. Like, the BTS on this film is incredible. Just to see some of Tana's rigs and just like everything that was done. I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for the conversation.
One last thing I want to say was just that what was really important about this film is just what we talked about. It's just that it's on VistaVision, and obviously shooting on Vista and what they did on The Brutalist last year, just that getting this kind of a format back in circulation, because Wuthering Heights is on Vista, the new Yorgos' new movie's on Vista, the Inarritu project's on it. So it's like it's great to see that this is becoming a format that is being adapted by more and more filmmakers. Anyway.
100%.
Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it.